we are.
You're old enough, Mike, you ought to know that was Barney.
That was Barney. Oh.
All right, folks, 6 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and call the Planning Commission to order, and I invite you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Okay, and Janice will do our roll call, please.
Commissioner Wiley,
Yes, I'm here.
Commissioner Politi,
Here.
Commissioner Morris,
Here.
Vice Chairman Gebhardt,
Here.
and Chairman Hoyska.
Here. Okay, and do I have an approval of the agenda?
Move approval.
Okay, and all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Okay, so we have an approved agenda, and we have approval of our minutes and the study session notes from the meeting from June 8th and the study session notes from August 10th and October 12th, 2021.
Move approval.
I have a correction, I believe, to the minutes on the votes that we have.
I'm sorry, which one, Mark? Which Commissioner Gebhardt?
Mark, can you talk into the mic, please?
I certainly can.
Thank you.
Better? I think the last motion that's mentioned, the one that had to do with the bathroom at the train park, it has here ayes, Hoyska, Gebhardt, Morris, Politi, noes none, abstained Wiley. It's my recollection that that passed with 3 votes, which would be Hoyska, Gebhardt, and Politi. And if my memory serves me correct, Mr. Wiley voted no, and I think Mr. Morris abstained.
And that's correct. That's correct. I verified it yesterday,
Okay.
so that correction is correct.
Other than that, looks good to me.
Okay, definitely taking that correction into account. And did we have a second on the motion from Commissioner Morris?
Second.
To approve? Oh, thank you. And ayes to accept the agenda?
Aye.
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 Okay. So then, with the correction accepted, do we have any presentations or announcements? I see none. And at this time, we will go ahead and open the public comment. This is the time for members of the public who wish to be heard on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Persons may address the Ione Planning Commission at this time on any subject within the jurisdiction of the Ione Planning Commission. And please be mindful of the 4-minute time limit per person. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the Planning Commission may not take action or engage in detailed discussion that does not appear on an item on the agenda. Just want to clarify.
Thank you and good evening. I just wanted to remind you once again, please ask you to be conscious to speak into the microphone so those of us with disabilities and are hard of hearing can hear everything. I invite you to take a look at the video from the last meeting. That is with the volume being up 15 decibels, just so we could hear some of the things that were said. So I'd like to just have a video where we can hear everything else without having to do any type of audio work. So again, I know it's easy to sit back in the chair and start talking in a grandfatherly fashion, but if you could just remember, like Mr. Rock does, lean forward, speak clearly into that, and then we can all hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nevin, for the reminder. Okay, is there anyone else that has a public comment at this time? Anyone on Zoom, Janice?
No.
Okay, so in that case, we will go ahead and move on to the public hearing. It is item H in our agenda. This is the Focus Zoning Code update, which includes revisions to clarify, streamline, and reorganize zoning provisions and revisions to address requirements of state law pertaining to a variety of housing types. The revisions to the Focus Zoning Code are citywide. The public is invited to comment on the Focused Zoning Code update, and the Planning Commission will consider the focused zoning code and make a recommendation to the city council regarding adoption. So we will go ahead and open the public hearing.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. I'm Beth Thompson with the City Planning staff, and I'll just give a quick overview of the zoning code update. And as you know, the recommendations for this item are to receive the staff report and presentation on the focused zoning code update, to take public comment during the public hearing, and then to make a recommendation to the City Council regarding adoption of the focused zoning code update. And this presentation is very similar to our presentation from the previous meeting, but I'm going to go over all the information again for anyone who may be here for the first time. My clicker's a little slow here, so I apologize. So the zoning code has been reorganized, and it's been revised to clarify some of the provisions and then also to add some new information. So the Article 1 regarding administration of the zoning code was reorganized and revised to clarify processing requirements and then also to provide additional entitlement and permitting mechanisms. One of the changes was to provide for minor variances, so approval at the staff level for minor changes to setbacks, height, space between buildings, et cetera, just various development standards, and it typically allows a reduction of up to 20% or less, so a change of 20% or less to the established standards by the code. And this is just to decrease the processing time for people who have a minor request. Of course, anything that comes in that's major, there's significant change would still go to the Planning Commission for consideration. The administrative article's also been revised to provide for 2 levels of site plan review. So there's a discretionary site plan review and now also an administrative staff level site plan review. And this is also to just streamline and make it more efficient for those minor projects that don't require a detailed planning level commission of review. We've also added a streamlined ministerial review specific to the requirements of state law. And so this was added to process applications that are submitted pursuant to SB 35 and similar provisions that have very specific streamlining requirements where we have to check applications to meet certain requirements, and we have certain turnaround times, and so those are now all will be codified with this, so it's very clear when someone looks at the zoning code how certain projects will be processed. And then also we made some revisions, and this was based on the comments we received at the previous meeting, to the development agreement requirements, and we added a requirement that development agreements must describe public benefits. So when you have a development agreement, they have to identify the public benefits that the project would provide. And then also added a finding that the agreement provides sufficient benefit to the community to justify entering into the agreement, so that you can be sure you have a mechanism to get community benefits out of your development agreements. Under Article 2, allowed uses, the majority of changes to this article were to address uses specifically required by state law. So provisions were added to address agricultural employee housing, duplexes, low barrier navigation centers, which are a type of emergency shelter, manufactured homes on a permanent foundation, residential care homes, and qualified affordable housing. We also clarified that there are certain animal keeping uses that are non-agricultural, since the agricultural employee housing provisions apply to any zone that has agricultural uses. So we wanted to ensure that somebody having cats and dogs in a residential or commercial zone is not an agricultural use of the land.
Madam Chairman, is this supposed to be up on the board?
Oh, this is supposed to be moving along. I apologize.
Yeah, your slide is,
Well, let me,
looking up.
sorry, that's what I got. Well, it's still, oh, there we go. Thank you. All right, so the administrative provisions, here's some examples of the setback changes. The levels of administrative review, and then here we are, allowed uses. So, and we also made some changes to revise the minimum lot sizes in the R1A and R1B zones, and to establish minimum lot sizes in the R1, R3, R4, C, T, and C2 zones. So that way it's very clear what those lot size requirements are. And this becomes important when we're looking at the administrative requirements to allow duplexes. So if you have different minimum lot size requirements, you're going to have a minimum, then if a lot is split, you have a minimum duplex lot size requirement as well. Under Article 4, standards for specific residential uses, this is a new article, and we reorganized some of the previous chapters into this article.
This includes the accessory dwelling unit provisions, and so those have been revised consistent with the requirements of state law. An all-new chapter to establish objective multifamily standards, so that as multifamily projects come forward, there's a very clear set of standards that apply to those projects. And this is very important because state law requires certain projects to be processed at the staff level. So if you don't have established objective standards, then those projects can get by without complying with where you have like a should in the zoning code, or we desire, we encourage. So where there's loose language that's subjective, that language would not apply to that project. So we wanted to make sure that the standards are very clear. And this is something too that as we process projects, they can be refined over time. So as you see different projects, they can definitely be changed, but these are a great starting point. I'll go over those in more detail in a few slides. We also have specific standards for housing types that are required by state law, provisions to accommodate duplexes in all single-family zones consistent with the requirements of state law, and then also updating the density bonus requirements, once again, consistent with the requirements of state law. In Chapter 17.114, the multifamily objective standards, those address neighborhood compatibility, building design, massing and articulation of structures, outdoor and common space areas, the design of the site, shielding or buffering of refuse containers, requirements to address natural resources on the site, cultural resources, provisions to ensure adequate water and sewer infrastructure, and then provisions requiring compliance with the city's street standards. And the water and sewer infrastructure provisions and the street standards provisions were added following the previous meeting. So based on comments from the commission, we've added those to make sure that multifamily projects are definitely held to the same level that we would anticipate other projects would be in terms of ensuring adequate water and sewer infrastructure is in place. Article 5, standards for specific non-residential uses. This is where all of these chapters that address non-residential uses are now consolidated into a single article. There's no revisions to these standards except updated references to the various zoning code chapters and sections. And then Article 6, the glossary was revised, and this now includes definitions for the additional terms and uses that are addressed by revisions to the zoning code, and we made, I think, a couple of minor changes to existing definitions. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Hand it back to you.
Thank you, Beth. So for any discussion, any comments? Yeah, no, I appreciate that. All the highlights, those are definitely, I know, items we had brought up, and I see them incorporated, and I know I brought it up before. I have concerns about, the ministerial process being implemented, so I appreciate just the oversight about the language and making sure that, we're building in, and also the impact that, as we're aware of more issues through projects, we can continue to kind of come back and address as needed. So, no, I appreciated the overview.
As far as the design goes, now, are we talking about just the residential? Are we talking about downtown? Somebody's going to change their part of their building, or?
So in the downtown, you still have the downtown plan, and the provisions there would apply as long as they are objective, but where they are not, then we would default to this. So the objective, these would apply in a lot of situations where there's just broader language, so that's something we'll open up and go back and look through and try to refine that so that it's more implementable when we're looking at multifamily projects.
Okay. And as far as animals, obviously dogs and cats, can we have chickens and rabbits in Iowa?
Wow.
We can.
We can have chickens.
Six chickens are permitted, no roosters within the city limits, but chickens are permitted. Six
Six hens.
hens. Yeah.
You can't have 7. You can only have 6 hens and no roosters.
Right.
Ooh.
We spent months on that.
At one time, this
We
was
did.
definitely the.
Do you have public comments or on this? I'd like to get up and ask something.
Can we open, I had the public comment on items not on the agenda, and then we opened up the
This is on
hearing.
the agenda.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Can we open the comment?
Well, it's up to the chair, and it's, the commission usually goes first, and so that's what you're doing right
We're
now, is
having our
asking
discussion.
questions of staff. And as soon as the commission is completely done with their
With our discussion?
questions and clarifications and issues for staff, then you can open it to the public, and then after that, you get to bring it back to the commission for final deliberation and/or vote, if a vote is needed.
Yeah, okay. So let's continue our discussion, commissioners, and then we'll go ahead and open up, Larry, for public comment. Was there anything more that we want to discuss about the animals? Yeah, the chickens is, I think, the one that gets the most comment. I don't know that we have as much, I don't know, that has come up before us about matters not regarding chickens.
I would just, I mean, aside from animals, I mean, that's all pretty well laid out, I think. I think Beth has done a fine job here. I mean, you've got two things going on, and I think she's done them both thoroughly. The main thing is getting our codes to comply with the ever-changing state laws. And that's, I think, done in as efficient a manner as possible. The other thing is relatively minor changes from our discussions last month, and they're there. And we spent a whole lot of time discussing last month, and it looks like maybe not so much this time. I think we've been down these roads. Actually, I have one comment while we're still on it, and this is old, but I just want to bring it up. 1720-040 zoning map. The zoning map by this, and as it has been, is incorporated, fully. I would like for each of us to receive a good copy of the zoning map, because personally, I would like to really go over it in detail, because frankly, I don't altogether trust it. A few years back, we had a major issue, somebody trying to get a zoning change or variance, I don't remember which one, and it turned out she didn't have to. She was in the right zoning anyway, but one of our prior city planners, prior to your company, his initials are Christopher Jordan, colored the wrong colors on the map. And I would just like to really go over it in detail, so Janice, if we could get a copy of that, when we finally send this off, we know we've got a good, correct map. So that's all I have.
And I do want to compliment you, Beth, on making those changes that we had discussions last month about.
Lively discussion.
Definitely. No, you incorporated in a very professional manner that I think we try to, address some of the nuances of the community that we want to, continue to, address those modernisms that we need. And then like Commissioner Gebhardt said, certainly, bringing the zoning up today, I mean, that's a requirement. And so we appreciate how you have made the process very simple for us and outlining everything. And I really like the red type and kind of it's so much easier to follow it and be able to track that. So I just really appreciate it. Yeah, again, just joining the chorus of we really appreciate it. And likewise, find less need for discussion, I think, with this November meeting. So, but certainly, Commissioner Wiley, if you have anything.
Yeah, I have several questions. Ms. Thompson, when you spoke, well, first of all, I was out of the room for a minute, so are we discussing all of this? Not just what you read out loud?
Right, so anything in the code, whether it's changed or not changed, is up for discussion.
Okay. You spoke about making community benefits clear when a project's going through. Is that an inference that a project does in fact have community benefit?
So if a project wants to enter into a development agreement where it can have certain standards and fees and things set in stone for the project, then they have to provide a community benefit. In general, you have a single family home and you get a building permit for that, that project doesn't have to provide a community benefit. But when a developer wants the benefit of a development agreement, then they have to show community benefits.
Well, I'm imagining some situations there wouldn't be a benefit to the average person, third person looking at this. I mean, with what we've got ahead of us in life with water and sewer and on and on and on and on in schools and in traffic, and somebody could make a good argument for a development that doesn't have a community benefit. So my question is there an inference in this that they have to have that?
If they want the agreement, they do, and there's different ways to demonstrate a community benefit. Yes, projects will always place additional burdens on the city, but they can go above and beyond in terms of providing water improvements, sewer improvements, they can provide a park. So there are some things they can provide, and that's subjective, and so that would come before you. You would look at that and you would decide, is this do the benefits outweigh the drawbacks of the project, and that would be up to your body and the council.
I was just anticipating maybe a real argument over that when it was here, but I hear what you're saying.
Well, Joe, I think what you're asking is what would be the scope of a project that would want the development agreement. It's usually more than 9 units. So if somebody wanted to build 8 units of housing, they probably wouldn't want a development agreement, and there probably would be very little community benefit to doing that. It's a scope thing, right? So if you get to a certain point where it looks like a subdivision rather than just a couple of homes, or a guy that just or a woman who happens to want to build 5 or 6 homes, then you're right, there's probably little community benefit. And the city could also want to have a development agreement with somebody who was just building 10 homes if there was a significant community development to be had. So it could come from either side, but typically anything less than 10 units, probably not going to pursue a development agreement. They're complicated, they're extremely difficult to negotiate. A lot of effort goes into that, so usually those are pretty big projects.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned different kinds of housing, and I didn't hear transitional housing. Is that a surprise to you that that's not listed in that?
Transitional housing is in your code, and then there are also some provisions to make sure that it's allowed in the high-density residential, in any zone that allows multifamily or mixed use, that's allowed. So that is in there. I didn't call that out, but that was in your previous code, and we made minor refinements.
And so while we're in that paragraph, what was the term, explain to me, low barrier something? What is that?
Low barrier navigation center. And it's a specific type of homeless shelter, an emergency shelter for people who are experiencing homelessness. And it reduces barriers to entry. So it may accept pets, it may have storage facilities on site, but there are oftentimes when a person seeks to enter a shelter, there are things that make it hard for an individual in some shelters to receive housing or to be placed there for the evening. So this is intended to be more housing first and make those easier to construct and easier to reduce barriers. It probably isn't a significant issue in Ione. This is one of those, the state treats every community the same way, regardless of whether or not you have a significant homeless problem or you have issues with shelters. So it's just checking the box and making sure we have that in there in case one is proposed in town at some point.
Is it something under state rules, would we be required to do it if it was applied properly?
Yes, it is one of those ministerial requirements.
Anybody, do we have any homes or parcels inside city limits with septic tanks, or is everything on sewer?
In the city limits,
In the city limits?
there's a few.
There are some, huh?
We'll have to double check, probably very, very few.
Well, the reason I asked, it sounds like it's not that important, is when we were talking about, you were talking about too, lot size requirements. And typically it takes more land to put in a septic system than to hook up a sewer. And so I was wondering if we need to deal with that.
No. You can sneak a septic tank in a pretty small lot if you know how to do it. I wouldn't recommend that, but you could. But no, I don't think, we don't have any septic tanks allowed anymore. We used to, but we had to transition all of that into the sewer system.
Yeah, everything's on the
Yeah.
sewer.
Last question. Is there anything in here, Beth, that now, by us approving this and sending it on to the city council, is there anything in there that changes the zoning of an existing piece of property?
Yes, so it doesn't change any of the colors on the map, so it doesn't change the zoning districts, but it does change some of the provisions that are placed on existing pieces of property. So there are, slightly different setback requirements, so it has some slight differences. Nothing that would make projects non-conforming, so, or there may be a few parcels that would become non-conforming, but anything like that would be grandfathered in, so it wouldn't be an issue, it wouldn't be a hardship for any individuals.
What I'm referencing is, Mark would probably remember this, about 10 years ago, and I'm making that up because I don't know how long ago it was, we had a zoning code update, my words, that changed commercial zoning away from all the little houses that are that way. And there was a lot of them. I mean, realistically, anybody would say they don't make sense because of the nature of our town, but people own property with commercial zoning, and we were tasked with changing it here, and it didn't happen, long story short. But I just want to make sure we weren't getting into that mess again. Thank you, that's all I have.
Okay, so if we are ready to close our discussion, we can go ahead and open up again to public comment. And we'll go ahead and start.
I'd like to bring up, you talked about zoning lot sizes in CT. We went through this before, and actually, the east part of town over there, there's lot lines that, like Mr. Gearhart's building, there's a house, the lot, they got a building right next to it. Now, if that falls down, is that guy gonna have to get a variance to put it back up? Because you're putting these clearances in here.
Well, if you look at the code section, remember when Mr. Tresner's garage burnt down and he did that was a non-conforming, we changed at that time, the time limit that you have to rebuild the
3 years.
non-conforming, yeah, it's 3 years. It used to be, I think, a year, and you
Yeah.
couldn't get insurance straightened out by then.
Right. I
So
remember
we changed
that.
it to 3 years, and that's still in here, I looked. So if that garage that's built directly onto our building, is that what you're talking about?
Well, it's not only that, we know the chief's house was right on a property line, and he went through, they fought over that for a long time.
That was a little different.
The house was
yeah.
right on the property line.
That was, yeah, and that hadn't been there before.
I thought it was. Anyway, I just wanted that corrected. It is, because the poor guy's got a house, it's already built there, so he's gonna have to come here and pay $400 for a variance to fix his house if something goes wrong
If
with it.
it's damaged, burnt, or whatever, he's got 3 years, and correct me if I'm wrong, 3 years to rebuild it pretty much as it was.
Right. And I'd like to thank you for bringing up about the zoning. I was one of them, they took my commercial property away. There was 70 lots they took away, 70. Yeah, they made us CT, yeah. We had straight commercial. We could build anything we wanted. I could build a 6-story building, and I got the papers to prove that, so I kept all that stuff. Now they limited me, I can't hardly do anything. They were trying to do away with me working on cars, and they told me we didn't have a business there. And my kid had a business there for probably 5 years, working on generators and trucks and stuff, and they tried to eliminate, well, they did eliminate it. I just like to know, thank you. But I'm glad the lot size, I was worried about that.
Thanks, Larry. Do we have any other comments at this time?
Gary Thomas, 125 Maple Street. Mike, tonight doesn't concern anything to do with the Preston School up there for zoning?
No, the state owns the property and the state is exempt from local zoning ordinances, sequel ordinance. The state is exempt from everything.
And you're going to have that on a future Ione City Council agenda or something, right?
We're going to talk about the Preston property
Right.
at a community town hall meeting.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other comments at this time? Anyone on Zoom, Janice? Okay, so then if there's no further comments, we will go ahead and close the public comment portion of today's meeting. And at this point, we can move on to item J, our city planner report. No, I'm sorry.
You need to.
I'm sorry, we need to finish our hearing. I'm sorry. We are still, so we closed the public comment of the public hearing, and now we're going to bring it back to the commission for any further discussion that we may have at this time. And so at this point, I do not believe that we have any further discussion at this time. So at this time, I will go ahead and close this portion of the public hearing. And do we go ahead and move into a vote at this time?
Entertain a motion.
I can entertain a motion to take a vote. If someone would like to make a motion.
Motion,
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. And do we have ayes to put a motion on the table to accept this? Okay, ayes?
We have discussion now?
Do we want to
Isn't that kind of the
reopen?
way that we were told?
So the motion should read that the planning commission will consider the focus zoning code and make a recommendation to the city council regarding adoption of such focus zoning code update. So that's the motion. Now, you had a first and a second, so you can have further discussion before you vote.
My only comment again, before, I don't want to hold this up, I really don't, maybe I should have done this before, but before we send this off to the city council, I would really like to do,
Point of privilege, please.
can you hear?
No.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Go ahead and eat it. Eat the mic.
Before we send this off to city council, I would like, and I think maybe I should have done this before, I don't mean to hold this up, but I would really like to see some good maps. And I'd like to make sure that the maps are all correct.
So separately, we had a couple of minor revisions we had noted to the map, and so we were planning on bringing the map separately to the commission, but
Okay,
not as part of this
Okay.
item.
I'm good with that.
Would that be at the next commission meeting?
We could do it at the next commission meeting, or, yeah, we could do it at the next commission meeting, I think.
Okay,
Mark, I think it's really important that everyone agree on what the map says versus what the zoning code says, so that everything is consistent. Because, you know, when we, as staff, we have to interpret the zoning code map and the code every single day.
right.
So it's really important for staff, and it's important for the property owners, very important for property owners, and potential property owners who want to buy property or sell property. So I totally agree with you, this is really important, and it should come back to you one more time for final approval of the map.
And I'll actually, we may schedule it for a further meeting, so we could actually publicize it and get any community comment on that as well, just so if there are any changes or corrections that we're missing, the community can have some time to look at it, because sometimes when they see it and it's before you, that's right when people are seeing it, and it's hard for them to comment, so we can actually publicize it and have a notice.
That sounds fine to me. If we could get those, I guess this is for Jazz, as soon as we could, so we have a little time to look at them.
Yeah.
And again, the only reason that I'm kind of, banging this drum is because there have been errors in the past.
Oh, well, we don't make errors anymore, I promise.
All right,
So just to confirm, we'll kind of have the text today, and then we'll have the map as the supplemental, because we can do this in like a two-part, so I like that. That's great. So, yeah, is there any further discussion? Okay, so then at this time, we have the first, we have the second, we've had our discussion, and we can go ahead and initiate a vote. And because of the nature of this one, what we will do is we'll go ahead and do a roll call, and I will start with Commissioner Gebhardt.
this motion would be, I lost it, Mr.
I'm
Wiley, your motion was just to adopt this resolution and send it on to city council?
Yeah, but I just seconded it. You made the motion.
I didn't.
Michael did.
That's what I thought.
I did.
Michael
You did? I'm sorry. I knew it was that
It was down
direction.
there somewhere.
And just to confirm, the planning commission will consider the focused zoning code and make a recommendation to the city council regarding adoption of the focused zoning code update with the condition that the map is going to be reviewed secondarily.
And the motion is to actually adopt the resolution.
Right,
just
to
consider
adopt
it
and
adopted.
present it to city, right, to
Okay, so-
to send it to city council for approval.
The city council won't see this until we see the map.
Exactly what I was just gonna say. So I'll make sure it does not go to the city council
Yeah.
until the map is approved by the planning commission.
With that, I vote yes.
Good thinking, Mike.
Okay, so we have a yes from Commissioner Gephardt. Do I have Commissioner Wiley
Yes.
and Commissioner Politi
Yes.
and Commissioner Morris?
Yes.
And I am voting yes as well, so we have accepted the recommendation. Yeah, so we will adopt this verbiage with the condition again that the map will be reviewed and approved in its entirety as well, with a public forum.
You know, just to be picky about this, and maybe my memory isn't correct, but the motion was to accept the, as it was given to us. And then we talked about having the map. We probably should have amended the motion for that wording, or have a separate motion for the wording about the map, because that's.
You're absolutely correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of evolved in
Yeah.
the course, and so I know I had mentioned it, but I want to make sure it's attached to that. So let's do that. Would someone like to make a new motion to, Commissioner Wiley, would you like to make the motion since you,
I don't feel adequate at the moment for the words.
okay.
You could say, I motion to direct staff to hold the zoning code update resolution and ordinance for city council until we have seen and reviewed the zoning map.
Yeah, I think what you're asking.
Do that?
Yeah, you're asking, yes, you're directing staff to make sure we do a process so that the map is approved before the resolution goes to the city council.
Right.
And when it goes to the city council, it will have the map attached to it as well.
Right.
Yes, and that's just direction to staff. And it's good to get that on the record so that we do what you ask us to do.
So moved.
Okay, so we are giving the direction to staff, and it is going to be included, and we have our first and our second, and we will take another round of votes just to make sure that we're all on the same
This
page.
is a new one, so you have a second. I'll
We
second.
have a,
I moved the
Oh,
amendment.
I'm sorry,
That's all right.
I'm sorry.
That's
I was
correct.
It was
losing.
an amendment.
we don't have a second.
I'll second the motion for the amendment.
A couple seconds.
Moved by Morris, seconded by Wiley.
Okay,
All
so
those
we have a
in
motion
favor?
on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. So, and again, just to confirm, we're giving the direction to staff, and so we're looking at this as two components. It will go to city council as one, one item
Yes, sure.
for the resolution. Okay, then, at this time, this will conclude the public hearing portion of our meeting. And we have nothing on our regular agenda at this time. So at this point, we will move on to the city planner reports. If there's anything additional.
Nothing super huge and exciting to report. We are still working on the general plan, the focused general plan update. And so when we bring the zoning map to you, we will also make sure that we have some enlarged copies of the general plan map so that you can look at both maps simultaneously, because one map definitely affects the other. So we'll make sure you can consider both. And we are anticipating as part of these projects that we don't have any significant land use changes, so we would want to focus on making corrections and things that don't invoke new CEQA requirements, if possible.
This sounds good. And then are we anticipating a December meeting for?
Christmas.
I would think so.
Okay, I'm just.
What would be the date?
December 9th? Oh, wait, no.
December 14th.
The 14th.
Yeah, that's gonna be the second Tuesday.
Do we have a quorum?
I'll be here.
I'll be here.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be here.
Oh, okay. I guess we have to have a meeting now.
We tried.
I feel like with the spirit of what we're doing this year, we want to, if we have business, let's make sure we keep our meeting calendared. And so, any future agenda items that we need to discuss tonight?
I just had one question. Mr. Rock, do you know when we're going to get the restroom issue at the train park back before us?
Oh, I actually have good news about that. We have a new city engineer, SNG Engineers. They are doing two things. One, they are creating a report and a recommendation that will come in front of the Planning Commission regarding the restrooms. And what I've asked them to do is to give me three options. Option A is exactly where it is now, facing the street, facing the neighbor's front yard. Option 2 is to flip it around and have the front entrance face the park with the back of the restrooms facing the street. Option 3 is to relocate the restrooms somewhere else and create a brand new firestorm of protests from different neighbors that probably don't want it on that part of the park. We will look at all three options and bring that to the commission for comment and recommendations to the city council. The other piece that's going on is because we stopped the entire project because of threatened litigation against the city, I've asked the engineer to create an RFP to go out to bid to finish the project with a public works contract code construction project. And all of that will be ready. That piece will be ready for the city council, we hope, and we're pretty sure it'll be ready for their first meeting in December. But the restroom piece we want to bring back here because that was a specific issue for the commission, and the commission was required to approve the restroom in the first place, which, as you recall, I brought it to you because it had never been brought to you, and that's a whole nother very long story. But bottom line is it will come back here, and that will be a separate issue from the rest of the park getting completed. And that will require the council to approve an RFP to go out to bid, to hire a construction company to finish all of the materials, construction, equipment, public works contract code stuff to finish the park. So we'll have two separate pieces moving at the same time. I'm hoping to get the restroom project to the planning commission, hopefully at your December meeting.
Is there,
It should be ready.
this had come up, there was some discussion of it. Is there anybody looking into the possibility of putting the restrooms inside the building? Or-
No, it's not possible. The building's not habitable at this time, and it would take an enormous amount of money to make it legally habitable by anyone,
Okay.
unfortunately. We are going to secure the roof of the train depot immediately as an emergency item, because a couple of metal panels have flown off and just started blowing around town, and that's not okay. So we're going to deal with that immediately, and so you may see some work on the roof to just secure it with the bare minimum amount of effort, but it will be secure, and we won't have any pieces blowing around.
Thank you for that update. I appreciate it, and we'll look forward to that, hopefully our December meeting. Okay, and with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you guys again, we appreciate it.
Move adjournment.
Second.
Should I- I